Today's question, what are reps in reserve or RIR? So basically, reps in reserve are a very simple coaching method to get the right intensity out of people when they're working out, particularly for hypertrophy or building muscle. So let's say you're doing a set of 10 reps in a squat. The idea of reps in reserve is if you're using a weight where 10 is the maximum reps you can do with that weight with good technique, safety, and without failing, the reps in reserve then are based off that. So if you have 3 RIR, that means you would stop at 7 reps because you have 3 left in the tank, 3 reps in reserve, which means you could do rep 8, 9, and 10, but you stopped at 7. 2 reps in reserve would mean you stop at 8 because you have 2 reps left, 2 reps in reserve, and 9 reps would mean you stop at 1 rep in reserve, 1 RIR, and then 0 RIR would mean you go all the way to 10, which would be failure. Now, the reason this is a very useful method is for intensity. So studies have shown that you generally need to train with a certain movement to a reps in reserve of about 7. So the right intensity on the muscle that gets you results. Anything lower than that, you don't really get results. So you need to do about 7. Now, the reverse of training with reps in reserve is going to failure all the time, where you would literally do a set of, let's say your squats, you do a set of 10. At 10 reps, you cannot do rep 11, no matter how hard you try, your technique fails or your muscles fail, you can't do rep 11. That's 0 reps in reserve or failure. Your next set then, because you failed, you will do less work, so you might only manage 7 with good technique, you fail again, and then you might do a third set where you might only manage 5. That's the reverse. The benefit of using reps in reserve with people is that generally the sweet spot for most people is 2 reps in reserve. And that lets you play with a rep range when you give people exercises to train with, because they might not have access to a vast amount of weights, or increasing weights in different exercises might be quite difficult. So when you give someone a rep range of 10 to 20 reps, let's say in a squat example again, and you tell them leave 2 reps in reserve, so that means you want them to train with the right intensity, that they have 2 reps in reserve each set. So their first set, they might manage to do 16 reps out of the 20, leaving 2 reps in reserve, which means they could have pushed themselves to 18, but they didn't. The second set, they might do, instead of doing 16 because they're a bit fatigued, they might only do 15. And again, the third set, because they're fatigued, they might do 13. Now, although those rep ranges are, you're decreasing in reps, your intensity is the same, which is the goal for, getting the right stimulus to fatigue ratio in regards to training, meaning you're doing enough that you're giving yourself a stimulus, but you're not doing too much that you're going to over fatigue yourself that you can't recover. And that's why reps in reserve are very useful for people when they're doing hypertrophy training, to get the right intensity out of the movements. And a very simple thing that you can do with people is, even if you just want to change one variable, reps in reserve with them over 3 weeks of training. Let's say they're doing 3 sets of 10 to 20 in the squat. We'll use that example again. The first week they do sets with 3 reps in reserve. The second week they do sets with 2 reps in reserve. The third week they do sets with 1 rep in reserve. And the last week they do sets with 0 reps in reserve. That way you can use the same weight, the same rep range, but the intensity is increasing week to week to week, because you're going to push yourself closer to failure. And as a result, then you're going to get stronger, or most likely bigger muscles, because you're training for hypertrophy. And that's basically what reps in reserve is. It's just a metric for gauging intensity for people when they're doing hypertrophy training in certain rep ranges. It's probably the better methods to use, rather than telling people to do 3 sets of 10. When you move on to an intermediate level, it's much easier to tell people to do 3 sets of 10 to 15 with a reps in reserve. And especially if you're working with a coach who can gauge their reps in reserve with you, it is a much better system. All right, guys, I hope that helps and kind of clears it up a little bit. If you have any questions, you can ask in the comments below. And as always, I hope you have a good day, and we'll talk to you later. Cheers.